Howdy everyone, I'm the Shadow of the Hawk, and today I'm being joined by the Floridaman, Creed Dredger. Say hello.
Sup?
I'm also being joined by Kamazo, the Dragon Simp.
Guten Abend.
And for most of you who thought he was just some 16-year-old British edgelord, nope. He is in his mid-20s and an Austrian. I was just as surprised as you guys.
Yeah, may come as a bit of a surprise at times.
Alright, so, as you probably read by the title, this is just going to be sort of like a discussion, predictions of sorts for Season 4 of The Dragon Prince, how we view things are going to go down with the human kingdoms. Do either of you want to go ahead, or do you want me to start? Because you two very well know what I think is going to happen.
I think you should start the groundwork off.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, so I'm of the opinion that most Catolans would be like Ezrin's going to come back. Most Catolans realistically would be under the guise of this is some level of police state because I doubt. So for one, we know people died at the Stormspire. That happened. It's battle. It's war. This show has shown people dying. So I feel it's safe to say that there were people killed. Right? I'm not crazy with
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
we've seen people get shattered and die before.
when people get stabbed, they tend to die.
Right, yeah. So people died at the Stormspire. Also, I imagine the Sunfire Elves wouldn't really take, they were deceived. I mean, they still came to Zadia. They still did some bad stuff. Like, the Sunfire Elves are still going to take prisoners. They might not kill them, but they're going to take POWs. So,
Yeah, and it's not like they can just release everyone they've captured. They've been turned into giant lava-skinned monsters at this point. It's not like they can just be like released back into
actually,
their families.
the Tales of Zadia role-playing game actually confirms that it's a short-term spell.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I did not know that.
But you are correct. They can't just let people out because this kind of segues into why I think why you won't just have people being happy-go-lucky that Ezrin's back. What reason do they have to believe, aside from the word of Ezrin, who is working with the dragons and the elves, that Viren was the bad guy?
I would argue at least Sorin would have some power to actually back that up, as
Right,
well
yeah.
as probably some people who actually fought under Viren,
Well, so
considering what he did with that spell.
I mean, but it seemed like most people were. They didn't try to. Soren was the only one who tried to run away, and also, yeah, that might add some legitimacy to it. But I mean, typically people tend to believe what they hear first. So if they hear King Ezrin sided with the elves and the dragons, and he's using them and the Durenians to basically take over Catullus, um, sure, that's not true. We know that's not true, but what are humans more likely to believe? A rational, backed up with facts statement or fear mongering?
Well,
Fear mongering. People would just always go towards fear mongering.
I would say it depends. You would have people go both ways, basically.
Right. Yeah, but we're also not talking about an intellectual population. We're talking a medieval society. Do I need to remind you two what happened during the witch trials?
Exactly. That's why fear
Fair.
mongering is the most likely route they're going to take.
Yeah, and also it's not just Catullus we need to think about, because sure, Ezrin might be able to convince he might be able to convince the Catolans if instead of using elves as a police force, because Viren would have pulled every able-bodied man and woman to war. Odds are piracy, banditry, criminality, all that stuff is now running rampant in Catullus. You're gonna
Well,
need
to
some
be
sort.
fair, there's still at least a fair amount of soldiers with the broken chain kind of guys.
Right, but that felt like a minority.
That's like a quarter.
Like, not
at
even a
most
quarter.
quarter of the army.
It was like 6
Then
dudes out of
again,
100. That's not even a
for
quarter.
policing, you don't need the entire army.
I mean, but if you're a medieval society, typically your guards and your soldiers interlapped.
Well, yeah, but at least from what we heard in the show, the army of Catullus is probably a bit above that, considering it's built to literally take on 4 other kingdoms at the same time.
But Catullus also committed the majority of its forces to that fight. So odds are the majority of its army was taken, and also those broken chain guys would have still probably had some fatalities during the fight. And
Considering they were kind of like the final charge almost, I'm
yeah,
not so sure if they would have
Fatality is
that
not
many
much. If anything, like
fatalities.
1 or 2 people at the end of it.
right, that's true, but still, so you have a massive loss of military capacity. Let's say it is 25% of their operational capacity. They're now only operating at a fourth of their military potential to now police a realm that's not really going to work, especially a realm that is now most likely going to have some level of unrest. You would, and levels of lawlessness. You would need a stronger hand. So that would typically probably mean Ezrin looking to foreign support for help. And he's got two sources: Duren or the elves. And both sides would look like a king with a weak position bringing in a foreign military to assert his dominance over the people. But let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say he manages to reign and let's say it's the ending of Narnia, where despite having no reason to believe the Narnians aren't monsters in the dark, the what were they called? You know who I'm talking about, right? The like pirate people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're like cheering and happy that the Narnians are here, even though they should believe that these are the demons in the dark coming to eat their children, based off what we know about their society in the beginning of the film. Let's say that's what happens with Cthulhu. It's like there's a dragon air show, and the elves are marching, and children are throwing them flowers, and not running and hiding and screaming that the demons are coming. Evanir, Delbar, and Neolandia are not going to react that way.
I mean, that one is obvious.
Yeah,
One thing I would say, it obviously depends on how they would actually approach the whole thing with dragons and elves slowly coming together with humans to actually set aside the differences.
yeah,
Obviously won't happen
yeah.
immediately. However, I don't think they would even be needed immediately for like a police state, but basically just I would assume at least that going forward the approach will be just slowly showing that these hostilities that were in place before that were kind of unnecessary in the end.
Yeah, it's true.
That's just my assumption that this is probably the way they're going to go.
That yeah, the show's definitely, it's a kids show. They're definitely going to try to go
Yeah.
for the simple. That's why, again, Narnia, it's a fairy tale. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's
Yeah.
allowed to make some sort of logical fallacies, but
One thing that will probably also happen is Soul Regem, the one dragon I probably cannot simp for, sadly.
yeah, see, you and I have a very opposite mindset on him, but continue.
Yeah, but well, at least we were told that he would make a return in the upcoming seasons, and I could easily assume that he would be kind of a catalyst to construe more conflict between Xadia and humanity
I mean,
again.
yeah, the Sunfire Elves do revere him.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's
wait a minute.
the obvious one.
Could Erebos give him his eyes back? So okay, I feel like we're about to take a tangent away from what this video was supposed to be, but
Probably.
so Erebos gives Soul Regem his eyes back and uses
I mean,
Soul
if you can
Regem.
resurrect someone, I think you could probably fix eyes.
So is it plausible that Soul Regem, and Creed, I want to hear your thoughts about this as well. Erebos uses Soul Regem to get the Sunfire Elves to get uppity, causing another fight among humans and elves.
I feel like any way Erebos could try to give him his eyes back would involve dark magic of a sort.
Considering Soul Regem kind of hates that the most.
Yeah,
Not
and-
necessarily.
He would smell it instantly.
Not necessarily. Remember,
And
he is a
Erebos being
celestial
kind of
elf
the
or whatever
person
he
who
is.
invented that shit.
Yeah,
Well-
and being that he's like supposed to be known for being imprisoned, like if the previous Dragon King had him imprisoned, you would expect Soul Ren
At
to
least
also
that
know
Soul
that he
Regem would
just
know.
should be
Yeah.
imprisoned in a way and not be trusted.
Right, but at least the vibe I've gotten with Erebos is he's like the Lucifer figure. He's like he's the one who whispers sweet nothings in your ears as he pulls a knife out, getting ready to stab. So If there's anyone who's duplicitous enough to make Solar Gem ignore dark magic, I think Erebos could do it. I mean, just
I
look.
would say that, in my eyes at least, that's a weird turn.
Yeah,
Really
it feels
weird
way
turn.
out of character for Soul
But
Regem.
also, you
Like,
guys, it also would.
fervorously hate dark magic.
It's also
But
assuming
it's Erebos. He's alright.
it's also assuming that he would have to use dark magic. Remember, he is like a celestial elf or whatever, a star-touched elf, whatever they're called. I don't remember the term.
I mean, to be honest, if it
We don't really.
comes to Soul
Yeah,
Regem
Star
and
Touch.
having to have dark magic as a tool to help him, I think at that point he would need to question his values. Otherwise,
I mean,
that would be
Yeah,
even
and then
more weird.
how visible could it be? Because like, if the Sunfire Elves realize that he's now involved with dark magic, the whole revering him thing is just out the window, gone.
yeah, it's true. So, but again, it's with Erebos. Well, so two things with that. First, Erebos is a star-touched elf. We don't really know. Again, I can't remember what the term is for him, but like you know what I mean, right? They have like
Star Touch. Yeah.
star-touched. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got that arcanum, and also rune magic is a thing that's mentioned in the Tales of Xadia system. So
I
he
mean,
could have
Erebos
access.
has actually all arcanums, so
Yeah, exactly. So he doesn't necessarily need to use dark magic, and also we don't know what form he's going to take when he comes out of the cocoon. So for all we know, he could come out as looking like a moth lady, or like he could not look like Erebos, approach Sol Regem and be like, "Hey, I'm a friend. I want you to go do what you do best. Go kill some humans for me." I have a word that I don't want
to
to
be
add to
honest,
that,
it
but
doesn't seem to me like Soul Regem would trust anybody but himself so far. He seems a bit like being salty at everyone, even other elves and dragons, at
right.
least from his
So I
interaction
I
with
guess it
Rayla in the beginning.
I guess it really depends on how much his hate for humans would overwhelm his just old man angst. And
Yeah.
judging by he was willing to kill a city of them for one dude doing dumb stuff, I can very easily
Well, to be
see
fair, one dude and his following, but
we don't know how
one
many
dude
that we
had a
don't know how
decision.
we don't know how many that was though. It could be like 6 people. It could
I mean, it probably would have been just like some sort of aristocrats,
or
basically. So yeah, a small elite.
yeah, like it wouldn't have been the majority, and he was willing to kill Illyrian, which was the biggest human city. So
Yeah, which is why Soul Requiem is a bastard.
yeah. Well, no. The fact that he was willing to do what it took to defend his species makes him one of the better morally just characters in this setting. Go, a bit of shilling here. Go check out my video where I defend Soul Regem. It's really good. And if you think I'm flip flopping on my defensive Viren point, stay tuned for the whole video. I'm an asshole. But so let's kind of like go back to
Yeah, back on topic.
yeah, let's kind of go back to the Catullus thing. So what kind of so kind of stepping away from the police state, what kind of plot lines do you guys want to see with like the human side of things? Because I think it's like I do want to see Ezrin and Anya have to actually explain why working with the boogeyman is a good idea. And also basically like a Sons of the Harpy type plot line from Game of Thrones, only less TVMA. I would prefer TVMA, but this is a kids show, so that's not going to happen.
I would want to see more of how the other kingdoms exactly see the whole situation.
Yeah,
Right.
so
And how they see
probably
the
delving
border
a bit
being
more into
figuratively moved
Avenir.
from one side to
Yeah,
the other, closer to them.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Avenir, Delbar, and Yolandia. Is a bit more on them.
Well, no, don't you know we have a ton of lore on them. We have a couple of paragraphs.
You're
know,
being too generous calling that a paragraph.
we know Evenir has good medicine. We know Delbar likes singing and killing each other, and we know Neolandia is basically the Islamic Caliphates minus religion.
Also, one thing is how all the other elves that weren't involved with how all this shit went down
Oh
would
yeah,
react.
yeah. Like I would like to. Well,
So,
the vibe that
I
I've got,
mean, at least.
the vibe I've gotten from the elves is like they're not very interconnected. Like I mean, sure, the game I've been running, for you guys and dude has been like the elves are kind of, but it doesn't seem like they really engage with each other that much. Like there's no real talk of
Yeah,
like,
they kind of seem like to mind their own business all.
yeah, I mean, I get it could just be we've only seen two elven societies. We've seen the Moon Shadows, which Moonshadow elf things, and we've seen Luxaria, but we haven't even really seen. We didn't see the butchers, the bakers, the candlestick makers. We saw the military, and we saw the bitch. I mean, we saw the queen. So we can't really. I guess we can't really talk too much about elven society, and it does mention that the Sunfire elves are craftsmen. Are they just trading their crafts amongst each other, or are they trading them with the other like the other kinds of elves?
I would probably assume, at least from the whole thing so far, they would probably be the main source of proper weaponry in the elven realms.
I wouldn't know because like the Moonshadow elves, they also make some pretty damn good stuff. Like Rayla's
Yeah,
blades
I was thinking
are
that.
like maybe they're better than the Earthbloods, but again, we don't really know much about the Earthbloods. Like
However, I would say Moonshadow elves seem more like handcrafted stuff and so on, while I could imagine the Sunfire elves being a sort of more industrialized society, if you know what I mean.
we will turn the industry of war with the sword and with steel and the iron fist of the orc. have I expressed how badly I want orcs in this setting? I want some
Yes,
orcs.
many
multiple
times.
times.
Uh,
Getting off tangent again.
that
And I
was
want lizard
more of a-
people.
You already have lizard people.
Obviously.
You have dragons, and I have
The more
barbecue.
reptiles, the better.
I'm half tempted to pull
Wait,
up the image that you sent me of Torque, but at the same time, I don't want to traumatize Creed.
I'd rather not. Anyway,
Ah, the
back to what we
maximum
would have wanted to
wipers.
see with the other kingdoms and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's go with that.
One idea I really would like, again, going more into it, would be how would the others react? Because up to now, they've never once had to deal with the threat of elves. Every other time throughout their years, there's always been Duran and Catullus at the border facing off with the elves. They've never had any interactions with them. And you
Mhm.
can sort of see that with the meeting that Viren had. The other three kingdoms, they really didn't take it too seriously. They were just like, if everyone else is doing it, I'll do it. They just sort of went with the flow. The only ones that actually had a more of a serious opinion was Durin and Catullus, the two kingdoms on the border. But now we have the border virtually moved closer to them. Now, if the Sunfire Elves are going to help Durin and Catullus rebuild, trying to like bridge that animosity,
I feel like it would mostly be
they're going to
centered
be
on
moving closer.
Catullus. It's not really going to be
Yeah,
rebuilding.
I
It's
mean,
more going to
Yeah,
be.
not much
really
helping
have
Durin, but
issues
like if
there.
Durin and the elves are going to help Catullus, it is going to technically move the border slightly closer.
Yeah.
And now they're
Actually,
going to have to deal with that. The other kingdoms that never had to see the elves get so close to them will now have to, and their reaction is what I want to see most of all.
yeah. If I had a decent editing software, this would be the part where I like plaster a map over this video, but I don't have a decent editing software. I just have the stock video editing software that comes with a Microsoft laptop, and I can't do
Hooray.
that. So I'm just basically gonna like try to describe the map to everyone. But so basically, if you remember correctly, you have Catullus in the south, Duren to the north. There's like a mountain range as well as a river keeping Catullus and Delbar apart, as well as like a sea, more of a strait, but like a body of water keeping Evanir and Catullus apart. So honestly, I still don't see the really only Neolandia would probably actually have any sort of Sunfire problems. I think.
And then again, Neolandia is basically a desert.
Well, more of like they would
Well, at least assumedly a desert.
don't get me in that fucking Frelling tangent. But so if you look at the map and also like just think about trade and stuff, I feel like Neolandia and Duren are very like they would probably realistically be very tightly knit because Duren has honey, they have farmland, they have a lot of trade goods, and Neolandia, they are a trading people. So odds are they have very tight connections. And Kasaf, I think is what his name is, right?
Hmm?
Kasef, Kasaf. The king.
Prince Kasif or the other?
Arling.
Oh,
Arling
Arling.
would be
Arling.
king.
Yeah.
Uh,
Kasif is the king.
yeah, I meant wait, really, King Arling.
Yeah, Arling.
That name,
Ahling.
that name, and that look, and like the location of Neolandia on the map is what made me think until they released the Tales of Xadia book that Neolandia were the Vikings. That does not sound like a name you would get out of the desert. Arling. That
Meanwhile, the
sounds
Viking one was Florian, but he's dead anyway, so
that
yeah,
that sounds Italian to me.
true.
Like it could just be I'm an American. Camozo, feel free to correct me as a European, but that doesn't sound. I'm gonna get into a tangent about the world building, but so I feel like
I,
Neolandia and Duren have before then a very tight connection due to Prince Kasef being killed by Anya. Unless they want to retcon that. Correct me if I'm wrong. She did kill him, right? Like arrow. She didn't just wound him.
with bullshit
Arrow to the
little
chest,
girl
to the heart,
power.
to the head.
Yeah. Okay. Unless they want to retcon that he is a dead man. Neolandia and Duren are probably, if not tighter than Catullus, probably the next tightest relationship.
Also, I think it's specifically confirmed in the Tales of Xadia book that he is definitely dead.
Yeah. Okay. So Arling, when he wakes up, is going to be livid, and I feel like if there's going to be any sort of human antagonist, because Arling is really the only human leader left that is not bowing down and scraping at the elves, begging for forgiveness. Delbar, they're having their little moot to decide who's in charge. It's basically just going to be a body mass index as well as a knife measuring contest to decide who's going to be in charge there. And then Evanir is probably just going to poison each other until someone is in charge. So really, if there's going to be a human antagonist group aside from Viren, it's going to be Arling, I think.
I mean, they could just also make some shit up from Delbar or Avenir to make some sort of new weird villain. But
They could also just introduce new people.
Well, but
also, since
Delbar
Viren is alive now, how about if Viren actually flees to one of the other three kingdoms and somehow, or specifically Delbar on Avenir, and tries to get into the courts there?
See, I think that look, with that, I think even if they believe him, I don't think they'd let him in because he's failed so many times. He
could try to conceal his identity technically.
Is there a spell for that?
I mean, technically you don't need a spell for that.
Well, no, but odds are they.
I mean, how many people did actually see Viren?
I would imagine
3 out of 5 of the kings are dead.
But he's also he was the right hand of the king of Catullus. I would imagine some other nobles have seen him and met him. So
possibly, however, I'm not sure.
Also, he's a very striking individual. It's not like he's a fat blonde redneck in America. He has a very general look about him that you would probably just off description go, "Oh yeah, that's Viren." So
I'd say it's at least a possibility.
Yeah, and even if they're like, "Oh yeah, Viren, we think you're right. I'll go to bat for you." He got Harrow killed. He his little raid.
A lot of people killed.
Well, but he was supposed to defend Harrow. If news got out about how he killed those guards, he killed his own comrades. He led an army into a war that got multiple people, including a prince, killed. Now, I imagine most of the nobles don't really care about the peons and the plebes dying, but he got a prince killed. I think that's where most people draw the line at failure. He got Prince Kasif killed.
No, don't worry. He'll spin the story around one way or the other and say that Anya killed him.
Well, Anya did kill him, but who was the one who led the army?
But twisting the story around to favor him it's just child's play for Viren.
So
he'll spin the story around like always.
He might be able to get Evanir and Delbar on his side with that, but Neolandia. Remember how from Game of Thrones? Remember how I can't remember John Karstark, I think who his was, but the guy whose 2 sons were killed by Jaime. He blamed Robb for their deaths just as much as he blamed Jaime Lannister. So I could see a very similar thing happening with Viren being all, I am your friend, I am your ally, whoop de doo de doo. Delbar and Evanir being like, okay, well, we hate each other, so we're gonna bring this to Neolandia and get Arling's opinion. Arling, you got my son killed. Fetch the headsman. Like that's how I realistically see that going down, because when it comes to your children, you don't think rationally. And I mean, granted, I don't have kids, so I can't really comment on that, but I
Mm.
imagine from what I have heard, people don't really think rationally when it comes to their children, and especially if your child is dead and the man who got your son killed walks into the door like nothing happened and he's coming to you begging for more support. I don't know about you, but I would probably kill him on the spot.
But what I'm saying is like it would be interesting to. The most interesting thing in that regard, in my opinion, is where is Viren going now, because like he doesn't really have many options at this point.
Honestly, I think Erebos has to have something going on, and my money's on the Bleak Tundra personally, because where else are you gonna hide something evil?
Because always from the frosty lands.
Well, also the fact that it's called the Bleak Tundra, it may just be the Druchii lover in me, but that just feels like someplace. Also, side note, who wants
Or
Dark
the
Elves?
Chaos Wastes.
Raise your hand if you want Dark Elves in this setting. Okay, you can't really see it, but like, I just imagine how cool Dark Elves would be in this setting. Imagine how quickly this setting would go from whatever it is to TV-14 if we had Dark Elves.
Honestly, they feel like they would just be made the cliche bad guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
but if we get a Malice Darkblade like character out of this, I would be perfectly fine. I don't know if Creed knows this. I get the vibe that Kaimozo does.
Yeah, you already talked about it in our round once, I think.
Oh yeah,
About the kind of shit he did.
the only Sigma Chad elf ever in existence. Legolas doesn't count. He's a Tolkien character. All Tolkien characters are Chads. That's just a universal law. So yeah, is there anything else we really want to add to this conversation? Because I'm looking at the timer and we're at like 27 minutes.
I don't
No,
know,
we
to
went
be
pretty
honest.
good.
Yeah.
We could just like go over quickly, make sure we didn't miss anything.
Okay, so we all agreed that there's going to be an absolute open revolt against Ezrin because he's coming in with a police state. I think we can all agree that's what's going to
I
happen.
wouldn't say we agreed on that, but
Well,
I mean,
okay. I'm glad we went over this again.
It's more of shut your mouths. I don't want
it's
to hear
a
it.
possibility. But I would probably see it a bit more lightly less extreme.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I just thought of something. One other thing. Would people really think of Ezran coming back to the throne as much of a power move or something like that with the elven stuff? Since technically he was king before,
So
and he
Ezrin coming
abdicated just for him, just
Ezrin
for Viren.
So just Ezrin coming back alone, I think people would be fine with. Ezrin bringing in a foreign military power to enforce law, because again, if you've looked at history, whenever there is a war of some kind, typically things on the home front get kind of lawless. It's why the United States actually, I believe during World War I or World War II, cut a deal with organized crime. They basically protected our shipping lanes, not our shipping lanes, but they protected our docks and stuff, as well as kept things in line in exchange for the U.S. government looking away from some of their operations. So basically, either Ezrin would have to align with criminals in order to keep the lawlessness more or less in check, or because the Tales of Xadia book does mention things like river pirates, so it's not that hard for me to guess that there's bandits, pirates, and if you remove the military so that you can go attack an elven stronghold, and then news of that force is that force got completely decimated, what are you going to do if you're a pirate or a bandit? You're going to get uppity. So odds are Catullus will probably be overrun by bandits and pirates and stuff. And sure, there is the chain guard. There are those guys who could definitely stand and fight and help, but that's not numerical. You do because it wouldn't be a straight fight. You would have to basically defend points of interest, stretch your forces thin, and if you know anything about Sun Tzu, the Art of War, you hit your enemy where they aren't. So basically, any sort of attempt to use a minuscule military force like the Chain Guard would eventually lead to them being depleted. So Ezrin would need to call in allies from somewhere, and that would either be Duren or the Sunfire Elves. And with Duren, I could easily see a plot line with Arling being like, look at this. First, he lines with elves, and then now he's bringing that queen and her army to subjugate you. What's next? There's going to be an announcement of marriage, and suddenly your realm will just become a part of Duren. You will lose your identity. And, like, that level of fear-mongering is definitely something I could see being done if they try to go with a more human political subplot. And if they don't, if they try to pull a Narnia and just make it everyone lived happily ever after,
which is probably what they're gonna do, at least from the type of show we're talking about.
They haven't tried to frame it as if it wasn't for the Tales of Xadia book, I would argue that's a fine way to handle it because they are just trying to make it a fairy tale. But there is an attempt at an actual sense of world building. It's in my personal assessment at the very least, and feel free to argue with me about this in the comments. I will fight you on this. The more meat and depth you add to a story, the less and less you can sit back on the fantastical elements as a crutch. Like, Narnia can get away with some of the stuff that happens because it doesn't try to really explain its world. Its world exists to tell a story. Whereas when you create a world, as we see that they are attempting to do with the Tales of Xadia series, with the Tales of Xadia role-playing game, you no longer are telling a story and using the world to tell the story. You are telling a story within the world and need to abide by the rules of the world. It does, if that makes any sort of sense.
No, it does, yeah.
Yeah, so...
The more foundation it has, the more realistic it needs... Or not realistic, the more grounded the story needs to feel within the world.
Yeah, exactly. It does, I always get into arguments with people about this of, it's fantasy, it can be unrealistic. Yes, it can be unrealistic. But it still needs to hold to a level of internal cohesion within the Anya thing. People have argued with me, well, it's fantasy, with dragons and elves, what's so strange about a 9-year-old girl hitting that shot from that distance?
This video is going to be turned into an hour long if we keep going with this route. We all agree the shot was bullshit.
Well, no, but it's my point. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not going to I will make a video on that someday. But the point I'm trying to make is the more and more realism you add to your setting by grounding it more and more in its own existence, the less and less you can get away with, it's fantastical. Because at that point, the world building you've made doesn't really matter. It's it's why I really hate James Cameron's Avatar more and more, because they spent millions of dollars on pre-production, even creating their own, style of music for the film. Go watch, I think I sent one of you the video, and if I didn't send the video, I will send it to you too. And if anyone in the comments is interested, I'll get you the link. But so basically, they spent a ton of time and resources creating this world for Pandora and Avatar and all this, and then Cameron basically threw out large chunks of it because he wanted to tell a story that didn't abide with the world that he had spent millions of dollars making, and that infuriates me to no end.
I mean, one thing I would say with the internal cohesion kind of thing, at least going back to the question of how policing would work after all of this, I would argue that so far the show didn't give a fuck about any military logic. Just saying the speed at which Viren rallied and marched an army through Xadia. Yeah,
that's true. So I'm fine with that being the case because all roads lead to Rome. They've established that the world is actually really kind of small if you pay attention to distances. So that's not really a big deal. But if there's a central plot later on that involves establishing a logistics train, then we have an issue. Because it's the thing with Star Wars, how they fight on a 2D plane, a World War II battleship. Is okay, cool. Don't ask why that's the case. It's just the way it is because that's the way it is in the universe. But if suddenly someone just randomly started doing expanse kind of combat, where they basically were using stealth ships and they came down from the Z plane and released a salvo of nukes as people came out of hyperspace from the rear, why was that never done before? You would need to actively explain why that kind of tactic was never done before, and now you can never have that type of battleship 2D plane ever again because the game has been changed. So they can do this like
Yeah, which is why I'm kind of against this idea of suddenly this idea of policing becoming an issue because of depleted military
Well,
resources.
so it depends on how
That
they
would feel weird from what we've seen so
right.
far, in
So
my opinion.
I feel like I should re-express this. If they try to establish that it's like Narnia, where the elves and the dragons just walk in and all the citizens are celebrating and are happy to see the boogeyman, and there is
I
no
mean,
sort of
I would
ramifications.
argue that's a different issue and more the consequence of those ideas, which is why I'm also kind of against this idea in general.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I guess we probably should have started out with that like discussion at the beginning because it is running long, like Creed said. So we should probably end it here.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think to like just end it off with is this is just three. As I said, this is as the title says, this is an edgelord, a swamp man, and a dragon simp arguing about a children's cartoon. So
Yeah.
don't take this too seriously. We certainly aren't taking it too seriously. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like down below. If you want to get into a fight in the comments, I will be right there, ready to go. If you're looking for a Tales of Xadia game, just ask me. I'll give you a link to our Discord server. We currently have 2 games running, but if you also would like to narrate one, I'm sure you could find some people to play. And yeah, thanks for watching. See ya. Bye.